Hi guys, it's Miss Krisnak. So I just wanted to go over some of the weather maps that we have been practicing each day. I'm going to start with weather map number 1, and we're going to go through what the answers would have been for each of the questions and why that would be the right answer. So looking at our first weather map that we did, the first question was, what type of weather is Sacramento currently having and why? So the first thing that we have to do is find Sacramento on our map. It's over here on the west coast. So you can see here's Sacramento. You can see that there is a warm front that would have just passed over Sacramento because warm fronts typically move from a southwest to northeast direction. So they go kind of in this direction. And that matches with the fact that we know that all weather kind of moves west to east. So it's moving west to east, kind of west coast towards east coast, but warm fronts specifically do it at this kind of south to north direction. And so we can see that the warm front just passed over it. And so this means that Sacramento is currently having warm weather. Okay, we know that the warm air in a warm front is always behind the front. So since the front just passed it, all of this warm air that sits behind it would be directly over Sacramento right now. So they would be having warm weather because of that warm front that just passed over it. The second question asks us, how will Austin's weather be different tomorrow and why? So if we look, we can find Austin here in Texas. Okay, and so we have to think about kind of what weather it's having today, and then how will it be different tomorrow. So if we look at Austin, we can see that a warm front is approaching Austin. We know that that warm front is going to move in that southwest to northeast direction, so it's heading in a diagonal line kind of like that. And we know that the warm air, again, is behind the warm front. So right now, Austin, Texas might be having kind of mild weather, and then thinking about the speed at which fronts move, warm fronts move slower than cold fronts, but we can still expect that in a day's worth of time that this front will have moved kind of in front and over and past Austin by that time. So all of this warm air that was behind the front will now be sitting directly over Austin, and again, we'll be having warmer weather tomorrow in Austin than they are today because that warm front will have just passed. Our third question for this map was, what type of weather is Jackson currently experiencing and why? So if we find Jackson on the map, it's right here. You can see that at Jackson right now, there is an H for a high pressure system, and there is the sun indicating sunny weather. The reason that it would be sunny weather with nice clear skies is because of this high pressure system. So Jackson would be currently experiencing nice sunny weather because of this high pressure system that is over the city. Question 4 is, what type of weather is Albany experiencing and why? So if we look up here at Albany, New York, you can see that there is clouds with rain, right, indicating that there is rain currently happening in Albany. And the reason that it is raining is because of this low pressure system that is sitting over Albany. And then the last question for this map was, what type of weather will Madison have in 1 to 2 days and why? So if we find Madison on the map, okay, we can see right now there's not a very clear indication of weather that's happening. It looks like it might be kind of partially cloudy in that area, but we're trying to see what's going to happen in 1 to 2 days. So we have to look kind of at a bigger picture from the map. You actually kind of pull back from the city to see where weather will be coming from. And we can see that there's a cold front and a low pressure system right here on the border of Canada. And so this will actually be traveling down in this direction, heading straight for Madison. It should be there in about 1 to 2 days. And so we can expect that as soon as this passes in 1 to 2 days, it'll be colder, and there might even be rain because of this low pressure system. Hi guys, so we're going to go over weather map number 2. We're going to go over the answers to each of the questions and an explanation as to why. So starting with question 1, it says, what type of weather is Jackson, Wyoming currently having and why? So the first thing we have to do is find Jackson on our map. We can see that it's right here, kind of on the very edge of Wyoming. And if we look, there's a big H there. That means it's a high pressure system. We know that high pressure kind of means happy weather. So we would expect to see nice clear skies with a lot of sun in Jackson. Question number 2 says, how is New Jersey's weather different today than the past couple of days and why? So if we look at New Jersey, again, right here, we have to think about when you're comparing days worth of weather, right, compared to days versus the past couple of days, you have to zoom out a little bit. So instead of just focusing on New Jersey, you kind of have to broaden your picture and look at what's happening around it. So we can see that this cold front will have recently passed over New Jersey. We know that all weather moves from kind of west to east, right, in this direction, left to right across the United States. We know that when it's a warm front, it moves kind of at an upward diagonal, and when it's a cold front, it kind of moves at a downward diagonal. So you can see that this cold front would have started up much higher towards Canada and slowly worked its way down and across. It would have recently passed over New Jersey. So the previous couple of days in New Jersey were probably warmer, more mild weather, because we know that the cold air sits behind the cold front. So now that this cold front has just passed over New Jersey, it's going to be much colder weather than it was the previous few days. Question number 3 says, if San Francisco has high humidity, what type of weather is occurring there and why? So if we find San Francisco on the west coast, you can see that there is an L indicating a low pressure system, which means lousy weather. So we know that lousy weather is going to mean lots of clouds. If it's high humidity, like the question asks, then those clouds are going to have lots of moisture in them. And lots of moisture and wetness in clouds is going to indicate rain. So we would expect that this low pressure system would have brought lots of clouds, and because there is a high humidity, that those clouds would be having rain fall from them. Question 4 is interesting because it asks us again to look at the same city, San Francisco, but imagine that instead of having a high humidity, it now has a low humidity, and to predict what type of weather would occur there and why. So again, there's still an L, there's still a low pressure system, lousy weather, we would still have lots of clouds, but if you have low humidity, that's going to indicate not a lot of moisture. So we would expect that there wouldn't be any moisture falling from those clouds. So you would still have the clouds. It would be a cloudy, kind of overcast day, but you would not expect any rain like you did in question 3 with the high humidity. And then the last question, question 5, asks us, what will the weather in northern Florida be like tomorrow, and how do you know? So if we look over here at Florida, specifically northern Florida, you can see right now that there is an L there indicating a low pressure system, lousy weather. You can see that there is rain on the radar kind of in that area, which again matches that kind of lousy weather. And then you can see that there's actually a stationary front. You can see the red half circles and the blue triangles together. That means that there's a stationary front over that area with the low pressure system and the rain. We know that stationary fronts don't move. That's why they're called stationary. Okay. They actually stay over an area, stay in the same exact place until one of the fronts eventually grows strong enough to pass over. And so we would expect that this stationary front would actually stay exactly in the same place for a few days. So if today northern Florida is having rain and lousy weather, we would expect that tomorrow it would also have rain and lousy weather. And that would continue until eventually this stationary front was strong enough to move. Hi guys, so I want to go over weather map number 3. And this one in particular, a lot of you struggled with. And I think the reason is because it was asking you to make a forecast to predict what type of weather was coming. So this map shows you what the weather was like on a certain Monday in the United States, and it asked you to predict what the weather would be like the next day on the Tuesday in each of the cities. And so in order to do that, you have to first look at what type of weather the city is currently having, and then look to the west of that city to see what type of weather is on its way for the Tuesday. So we're going to go through each of the cities. The first one was New York. So if we look over here at New York, we can see that right now it's 28 degrees and it has a kind of half circle, which means partially cloudy skies. And so if we look to the west of New York, there isn't really a lot of weather right nearby. There's no fronts that are very close. There's no way that this front, which is in the middle of the country, would have enough time in one day to get all the way to New York. So there's not a lot of weather directly nearby New York. So because there's not going to be any weather kind of moving in, we can expect the same type of weather is going to continue. So we would expect that Tuesday's forecast for New York would be partly cloudy because today is partly cloudy and there's no sort of big change on the horizon. The next city was Chicago. So if we look at Monday's weather for Chicago, we can see that it is cloudy, fully colored in circle, which means cloudy. And there are these little circles indicating snow. So it's cloudy and it's snowing in Chicago today. To look at what it would be like tomorrow, again, you have to look to the west of Chicago. So Chicago is here. If we look to the west, you can see that there is this cold front right to the west. So in a day's worth of time, knowing that cold fronts move relatively fast, definitely faster than warm fronts, we can expect that this cold front will have crossed over Chicago and be sitting kind of right behind it, and all of that cold weather that is behind the cold front will be directly over Chicago. So our best forecast for Chicago would be cooler temperatures. The third city was Boise. So if we look over here at Boise, today we can see that it has clear skies. To figure out what our weather would be like tomorrow, we have to again look to the west. Towards the west, you can see that there's a warm front with rain directly behind it. In a day's worth of time, we can expect that that warm front will have traveled over and past Boise, so it'll be warmer, and all of that rain that is right behind the front will also be over Boise. So the best forecast would be warmer with rain. The fourth city was Minneapolis. So if we look, Minneapolis right now just had that cold front pass and it has clear skies currently. There is not a lot of weather directly to the west of it, so we would expect that this type of weather would continue because there's nothing indicating that a major change is happening directly to the west. So we would expect for Minneapolis that the best forecast would be clear skies and cold. The fifth city was Dallas. So if we look down here at Dallas, right now Dallas is having rain and it has partly cloudy skies. If we look to the west of Dallas, you can see that there is this cold front right approaching it. We can expect that in a day, that cold front will have moved over Dallas and past it, and all of that cold weather that is sitting behind the front will now be sitting directly over Dallas. So the best forecast for Dallas would be cooler temperatures. If we look at our sixth city, which was Billings, you can see that right now it has clear skies. If we look to the west of Billings, this warm front and this rain is approaching Billings. Depending on how fast this warm front is moving, it's likely that it will have just passed Billings, so we will have warmer weather with rain. And then our last city was Los Angeles, right here, which is currently having partly cloudy skies. If we look to the west of it, you can see that there is this high pressure system that will likely have moved over, and high pressure, happy weather. We would expect nice, clear, sunny skies.